What's going on, YouTubers? I thought I would do a quick video on guitar tone. There's a lot of videos out there on how people are setting up their guitar and how to, do an effects chain. But a lot of time people are really frustrated with guitar tone. A lot of people want to get a new guitar and change out the pickups because it's not sounding right. So anyways, this is what I use throughout all the different pickups I have. I have zebra pickups, DiMaggio's, CVRs, a plethora of different types of tones that I often use only 2 or 3 patches depending on the guitar I'm using. So let's dive in and see what I'm using. Okay, so the first tip is guitars, right? No matter what guitar you can have the most expensive guitar to the crappiest one. If you don't know the fundamentals, no effects, no guitar tone is going to help. So one is get savvy on the fundamentals. Two, pickups do matter. They do add an element depending on what style you're playing, but they aren't the end-all be-all of your tone. I have a CVR up on the Jackson, and I also have zebras on the Dean. Now, yes, I have the same patches for both guitars, and I might tweak them differently to give in to the type of pickup they are, but really it's the same type of tone. Everything I'm running is all digital, so don't be real quick to change all your pickups because you're not getting the tone you want. It may be what you're playing through. So the first step is, as far as before you change out a pickup, look at what you're playing through and try to dial in your settings to the specific pickups. If at that point you're not happy with them, yeah, by all means change them, but don't just change them just to change them. There's a lot of videos out there where they match CVRs with EMGs, and the main thing is what they're playing through. So think about that first. So the next is how we're getting our tone. Okay, so like I said, I'm a digital person. I used to have a custom cab, and I got rid of it because one, it's too bulky, and two, I didn't have a lot of creativity freedom on it. You usually are locked into that particular type in settings and amps and speakers, so it wasn't that route I wanted to go. So with a foot pedal, you can pretty much do anything you want depending on if you have a Line 6, the new Foxfire coming out. Really, the possibilities are endless, but you want to set it up and use every bit of the board, and here's what I'm talking about. So I always go into a tuner, and of course this is Digitech's Polytuner 2. Has a great bypass, an amazing pedal, and I absolutely love it. So that goes straight into the board, and I usually have it going straight out 1/4 inch to a mixing board or XLR to a mixing board. It's my preference to get a good sound. So like I said, if I was using a Dean with the zebra pickups, I have a few settings and I have them set in a scene if I want to go that route. So I always have a guitar, and I go through a Carvin amp, and I have a rhythm channel, and I also have a lead channel, the same amp. And there might be a couple boosts on there for a boost pedal, or I might tweak the mids and highs, but for the same token, it is the same amp and channel. That way, if I want to switch over real quick, I can. Now here's the thing about rhythm, and a lot of people underestimate rhythm. You don't always want to go full distortion, and especially if you're playing for a worship band or if you're playing with other bands in general. You don't want to go full tilt, because once you try to boost it, there's nowhere to go. So I always have a hot channel, and the distortion is somewhat mild. And what I do is on my foot pedal, I have modified the settings so that my pedal is the gain. So I'll go from a light to medium gain to a full medium gain where there's a nice crunch. And when I go to, let's say, a verse or chorus that needs a really filled up crunchy rhythm, then there's my boost. Now I have my distortion pedal, which is a screamer, and in some cases I have a spark set, but there's the extra boost you need. And then while you're playing, when you finish that chorus, you back down, and now you're back to where you need to be. Or if you need to back off a little bit, you don't need that full distortion, you can add a little more gain to the channel. And so those are the things that you look for. When I have my Jackson, I do use the same amp, but what I do is I modified the entire thing, and now I have what's called a Dirty Jack, still the Carvin amp, and same thing. I have a nice rhythm where I can clean it up in my volume. The distortion I have on here in the settings is very pick sensitive, so the lighter I pick, the more it sounds like a tube amp. And if I want more crunch, I'll add the gain. And if I go with that high part where I'm trying to crunch and lead into where the lead guitar is playing, or if I'm playing lead, boom, there's my lead, okay? Now, sometimes you have to really tweak the settings on your pedals. So for example, this setting for the Dirty Jack is a hybrid. So I have two channels, a clean and a distortion, or hot rather, and then I have a meld, which is called the GNX model. And that's what this is on. So if I go for my clean, all I do is customize the pedal. Again, going off of scenes on a set of 5s. Now I have a clean channel, and sometimes warping those channels, which is the yellow channel, is the best way. You might need two different speakers with the same head, and it really just gives that sound tops right over. And again, your distortion if you need it, just to add that little dirtiness to it, just a spark for that grit. And again, you can add chorus or delay and tweak it so where it's, when you back off, there's nothing on it. When you go full tilt, it really pushes that feedback on the delay and the chorus. So don't just limit yourself on, I need a heavy distortion, I need a clean channel. Give yourself a staircase build to where you're playing, you can go back and forth and add an element when you're playing with people. Alright YouTubers, so this is the last step, and I promise you it's the easiest step, but it gets overlooked by so many people and they get frustrated, and they'll either want it to sound like it's hard or say it's crappy and change it out. But believe it or not, getting your guitar tech set is probably the biggest problem most people have and uncomfortable with doing it. A lot of people will pay others and you'll be wasting a lot of money, but if you learn it, it's the easiest thing, I promise you, because you'll be doing it all the time. So setting up your guitar takes 4 steps, okay? Aside from getting your guitar in pitch to whatever you're doing, I normally will do this at 440 pitch. You're going to want to adjust your truss rod first before anything else. You're going to want to adjust your height on your strings, whether you're doing a 6-saddle or you're doing a 2-matic bridge. You want to adjust your nut height. That way it shows where the string is lying, so how high it is from the frets. And then finally you want to adjust your saddles laterally, so getting your intonation set. These are probably the most simplest steps, but you'll find once you've done it, your guitar sounds much better. If you play full bar chords, you'll notice a huge difference. If you have to adjust your nut and afterwards, you'll notice, like, man, I'm not crunching down on those chords so hard. And that'll do a couple of things. One, it'll keep it from going out of intonation because you're not pounding on your strings. And 2, you won't wear into your frets as hard because you're not applying as much pressure. So to do those 2 steps, in addition with like a screwdriver or a key, you need 2 extra tools, and those tools are this. You're going to want to have a 6-inch ruler that has 4 different measurements on it. You're going to have 64, 30 seconds, 10, and 100 thousandths. In addition to the capo, you also need a depth gauge. Okay, you can get these from Lowe's, and this you can get from Amazon or a machinist shop. And this is have different fingers, and each finger is at a different thickness. 2 things to remember is if you're doing a guitar, the measurement is 0.010 thousandths. If you're doing bass, it's 0.015. And I'll show you how to use those in a second. Now, just note that if you're buying a new guitar or you already have a guitar, these adjustments are going to change depending on the seasons or where you're going. A lot of times I'll have my guitar set perfectly. I'll go to where I'm playing and guitar is off. A lot of times it's the 4th step I need to readjust to re-attack, or a lot of times maybe it's just a truss rod and I just have to fix that real quick just because it's out of tune. So with this, here's how we do the steps. Nut adjustment. What you're going to do is you're going to use a capo. Why? Because you need an extra hand. So you're going to take your guitar, capo on the 1st fret. And I don't mean like on the fret, I mean literally on that metal fret. You're going to capo right on it. You're going to take your gauge, which is 010. Uh-oh. Here we go. You're going to find the fret that meets the body of the guitar, okay, not past it, right on it. And you're going to put your finger right on that fret and hold it down, okay. Of course, it's a little backwards. I usually will measure at the end of the 5th fret and the beginning of the 7th fret, depending on how you do it. And you can usually do these two or right in the middle. I find I'll check all 3 at some point. But once you hold it down, you're going to check it. And here's a rule of thumb. Once you slide the gauge under the strings, if you slide it and it's not even touching the strings, you need to tighten the truss rod. Okay, and to that you're going to be doing clockwise. Okay, you're coming towards you with the nut. Now, if you slide it under and it's hitting the string and it's rising it up, all right, it's too tight. So you need to back away from you. Again, a little adjustments at a time. Now what you want it is right where you slide it underneath, it's hitting the string, but it's not rising up, right? You want that nice glide on it, okay? That's a perfect setup for the truss rod. Once you have that, close the nut, take off the capo. The height adjustment is where the ruler will come into play. You will be using your 30 seconds measurements. Normally for my first 3 I'll set at just under 4, 30 seconds, and then for the lower 3 I'll set at around 3, depending on you know, if I'm really hitting a string too hard, if it's vibrating, I'll raise it up a little bit. But for the most part, it's set in that fashion. So for the pneumatic bridges, for these guys, you're gonna set one side, and of course if you adjust one, you got to check the other because it might be pushing it under or even. So check it for the individual saddles. It's pretty much easier. Once you check the height, you're gonna go to your nut, and again, same bit. You're gonna use the same measurement, 0.010. You're gonna slide it right under, on top of the 1st fret, underneath the strings. And what you're looking for is if you have to press the string down to meet that depth gauge, the thickness, then it's too high. All right, you need a file, a nut file. You can get those on Amazon. Don't use a regular file or a knife, because you'll either wedge it or you'll carve out too much of the nut. And you just want to do a couple passes, just like 1 or 2, put the string back on and double check it again. It might take a couple minutes, but be patient and get it right. Once that is set, you go to your bridge again and adjust intonation with your tuner. Those are probably the easiest things that you'll notice a huge difference in with your playing. It'll sound smoother. A lot of chords, especially that G string, won't sound as funky with chords. And another big problem is that people don't adjust their pickups to the string height. A lot of times they have them so far up that they're buzzing on the guitar strings, and people are like, I don't understand what's going on. It's because your pickup's touching your strings. A lot of times people have them too low. And there's no real gauge for that. There's recommended heights, but for me it's what sounds the best for me on that particular guitar. So that's how you'll adjust it. Remember, on the lower end you won't be up as high, because if you're really pounding on the E string, it's vibrating, hitting the pickups. So find a good spot for that. If you have a tremolo, make sure that the tremolo is floating perfectly. Okay, if you have it in tune and you see the bridge rise up and it's not even with the surface of the guitar, you know, just adjust the springs on that. You know, those are simple things that you're playing everything right. It's the guitar that's not set up for you. So I find that it helps a lot too, especially when you're doing delays and you're doing, you know, triad chords. That'll make a big difference. But in the end, those are a couple tips. You know, whatever you're using, think about the sound and how you can tweak it before you're buying or replacing anything on a guitar. Majority of the time, you can probably scrub that out with a quick you know, adjustment, or changing out a guitar pedal. If you have an amp, get the guitar settings, get a notebook, and say, okay, on this guitar, these settings are the best for it. When you get another guitar, go on there and readjust everything. Okay, on this setting, you know, this one's great for this guitar. Those are things that a lot of people just don't think about. They have 2 different guitars, different pickups, and they think the same settings are going to apply. It won't. If you have a guitar pedal, doesn't matter what you have, you might have to tweak a setting, and be prepared for that. But whatever you have, use the full extent of the pedal. Don't have just a full high gain and full clean. Build it up. Have 2 different, you know, levels of distortion and a boost. You know, if you're a lead guitar player, Try to have a chorus with a modulating effect on it and a delay or 2 delays. Have those ready, because you don't always want a full hit when you're playing. You want to add and pull back a little bit to engage your audience, and it's what inevitably makes you a better guitar player to play with. So think about those things. There's tons of videos out there. If you have any questions, I've done tons of experimenting and playing with, dabbling with my pedals. Leave an email or leave a comment. I'll reply to you guys. But thanks for watching, and this has been my quick review.